Good morning and welcome to the September 28th regular meeting of the Town of Bethlehem Industrial Development Agency. It is 2 minutes past 8 and I will call the names of all of our members to establish that we have a quorum this morning. Going around the table, myself, Victoria Storrs, Ted Barbieri.
Ted DeBarbieri.
Ted DeBarbieri, Dick Kotlow, Dave Cadera, and Victor Franco, 5 members. This is all of the currently seated members. So we open the meeting with a quorum at 8:03 a.m. Also with us this morning, we have our Executive Director and Agency Counsel, Kate Hedgeman. We have our CFO, Al Michaels. We have Chris Canada representing our special counsel, Hudson Russ. And Kate, would you like to introduce your law students who are also here and assisting?
Sure. We have Alexis Mousakis, Jennifer Diefendorf, and Carrie Glover.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. Yes. And finally, we have John Taylor, the town's senior economic developer. The next item on the agenda says introduction of new members. We have, and they're still pretty shiny and new, Ted DeBarbieri and Victor Franco. I also want to take a moment to remind everyone who's watching that the IDA has 2 vacancies on our board, and the town board evaluates applicants and makes appointments. We definitely encourage people who've been following what we do, who are interested in economic development and business growth in the town, to apply to the town board, be considered for one of our positions. And you can find information about that at bethlehemida.com and any information there. So we encourage applications to the town board. They generally go through the office first of our supervisor, David Van Leeuwen. Members would also be happy, I'm volunteering all of us, but particularly myself, to meet with people who are serious candidates and let you know a little bit about what we do. Okay. Our next item of business is to approve the minutes of our regular meeting from August 24th, 2022. Do we have any questions or edits to the minutes of August 24th? I'll accept a a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Dave. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Victor. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you for approving the minutes of August. The next item of business is reports of committees. The Finance Committee and Governance Committee met jointly here last week. And I will first ask for a report of the Finance Committee from its chair, Dick Kotlow.
Good morning, everybody. We'll start off with Al giving a review of our financial statement.
Okay, you should have in your packets the financial statements through August 31st, 2022. On the asset side, our cash account balance is $861,013.61. We had a fee receivable of $92,590.50. We've since collected and deposited that. We had prepaid expenses of $1206.68, giving us total assets and total current assets of $954,810.79. Our liabilities, we had accrued expenses of $13,556.25. That represents a portion of the annual service agreement we have with the town and the prior month payment for our CEO's billings. So our total liabilities are $13,556.25, giving us net assets of $941,254.54. How do we get there? Our statement of revenue and expenses, year-to-date fee income, $467,213.30. Our PSEG energy reimbursement is $123,795.24, giving us total income of $591,008.54. On the expense side, our contractual expenses are $85,366.26. Business and economic development expenditures, $4,000. giving us total expenses of $89,366.26, giving us ordinary income of $501,642.28. Add in some interest income of $63.77, and we're at $501,706.05. Every year we prepare a budget for the following year, so we'll compare this year to what we budgeted last year. As you can see, our fee income is about $432,000 and change above what we budgeted at this point to date. Our PSEG reimbursement is $77,128.58 above what we budgeted. At least on the PSEG, that's just a function of increased production power and increased costs, as we all know about. On the expense side, our contractual expenses are $66,5960 higher than we had budgeted. Business and economic development is $26,6668 over. So on the expense side, we're about $9,326.28 above what we budgeted. And on our income side, we're $499,716.71 ahead of where we are. That's basically a function of some project fees and a higher PSEG reimbursement. Does anybody have any questions on the financials?
Thank you, Al. Excellent as always. Before we get into new fee schedule discussion, a couple things on the financial. As Al mentioned, we do have a significant amount of cash, and we've discussed with M&T, and we're going to purchase a certificate deposit with M&T. Their best rate is 60-day rates, so we'll go 60 days for $750,000, and we'll make a couple extra dollars on it, and we'll reevaluate it. And M&T is our depository bank, and based on our collateral agreement, that should be fine. It just automatically moves up. They have a system where their collateral just floats with our balances. So it worked pretty well. We don't have to deal with that issue. Will be compliance. I'll mention the increase on PSEG because of the rates, which is good. I've asked the finance committee to come up with budget information for next year. Madam Chair gave me a list. We have to sit down and talk, and we're going to have a meeting, because for the October meeting, we're going to present the budget. We have to present the budget for approval. So that's in process, and we'll have it sometime, and I'll coordinate. Can we still have a Zoom meeting if we have to? Or do we have to be in person?
Gotta be in person.
You mean for committee?
Yeah, so we have to be in person, so. So now on discussion on new fee schedule, we've discussed over the past two meetings some fee increases, which we still haven't come up with a 100% presentation solution. We will if we have an application, but we're talking about how our applications are processed. Right now, what we do is we have a nominal $500 fee. We've been discussing different ways to maybe not increase the fee, but to increase the commitment, whereby we really, as a IDA, have a big cost involved with an applicant. And if we go and take the time to approve an applicant, we should have some inducement to have them close. And we've been discussing that. And hopefully, maybe by October, we'll have an agreement to where we want to go in that to really reimburse us some of our costs if the project doesn't close. And quite frankly, I think that's important from what we've learned. We also have discussed fees for splitter agreements and other agreements that we have seen over the past few years, and come up with a fee schedule. And we've been talking about that. We really haven't had anything definitive. Is there anything else?
Well, I did put the fee schedule proposal in the packet.
Okay. Just,
It's right after the financials. Should be.
oh, I couldn't read it. That's the fee. Those are the fee schedule.
Yes, so the top part of the fee schedule, it says Bethlehem IDA proposed fee schedule on top.
Okay.
The current policy I copied in
Mhm.
to the page there, and you can see it really only addresses bonds, pretty much. And for, at least since, I've been here, we were kind of, assessing fees as we went along. So on the bottom is the proposed changes for discussion based upon our committee meeting last week of what we would charge, for the actual fees we would charge. And I did discuss these with Joe Scott, and he agreed that the range is the better way to go because it depends on the complexity of the transaction, obviously. And then the only other input I wanted to get from all of you was, like you said, the when. When do you want to charge it? And how did that process really works? And then I can memorialize that with amendments to the fee schedule.
Okay, these are the fees on our, when we do a closing.
Well, right.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we didn't have anything in the policy that says we charge X dollars for pilots. We charge X dollars for sales and use tax. And these are your administrative fees. In addition, the applicants usually always pay all the attorney's fees as well.
Okay, I didn't know, this is fine. I mean, how do you want to act on that? Approve.
We had a discussion about, as Dick alluded to, why we felt that we wanted to get more upfront once we have accepted an application as being complete and within, and eligible during the Finance Committee meeting last week. And that will be reflected in the minutes that are posted. What I recommend for this morning, since that meeting, this is the first time we're seeing all of this, what I would recommend, Dick, is that we invite some discussion and questions and then bring it back for approval in October.
That's fine. So these are the fee schedules for a closing on a transaction that we're gonna.
Right.
That becomes the meat of the work for us to do the application review. And I think that's what some of these are, if I read the notes correctly. So, for example, the pilot administrative fee might be characterized as, once we agree to accept the application, which we only do when we are serious about an application, history bears that out, then an additional fee is due to help us offset staff costs or any consulting costs associated with review and analysis of the application. And those would be paid before closing. As you pointed out, if a project is withdrawn later in our review process, we don't get to the closing, we don't get reimbursed, and we have expended the resources for review.
Madam Chair, just to interject one thing, pilot administrative fee, often some IDAs have it as an annual fee as well. So that would be it wouldn't just be a one-time fee, it would be annually, sometimes.
Yes, yeah, and we actually about 11 years ago, it was just before I came on the board, the board adopted a 5 basis point annual administrative fee, which is actually a little further down. It's on the next page in the minutes. Al has consolidated those.
Okay.
So what we've been talking about is trying to offset the costs of our review for that period in between the acceptance of the application, the inducement resolution, and the closing, when our ordinary and existing fee schedule becomes effective.
Yeah, but I don't, okay, this really is, these fees are for a transaction that closes on this schedule you've given us. It has nothing to do with an application,
Well,
except for the $500.
well, first of all, I raised it to 750, right? Okay.
Is it, where's that? I mean,
It's right under proposed changes. So we have to think about it like this. What we're looking at is two different things. A policy amendment at some point based upon what you want it to say. And sometimes, excuse me, you handle the fees within the transaction documents too. So I'm not suggesting up top it says current policy that we necessarily do anything with that. That's just there for reference. What we would need to add to our policy and fee schedule so that it's transparent and on the website, because John and I get a lot of calls about fees and things, especially when we're doing refinance and things like that. We want people to understand that there is a fee for not only the transactions, but also refis or anything after the fact. In addition to this, what I'm asking for is the timing element, which you're talking about. So the IDAs that I work with, $750 is the application fee. You can of course set it, back to $500 or whatever you'd like, but I think you need an application fee just to come to the door. And then if it's like, for example, Dick, if you get an application for housing, let's say, and we don't want to do that.
$5 million.
Right. At that point, you would say, well, this isn't necessarily something we want to do. And that's just an example for, or this particular application isn't even eligible for benefits, whatever they're asking for. So that's sort of the yes, no, yes, we're going to move forward, or no, this doesn't make sense. Once we decide, yes, it's eligible, and yes, we will review it, that's when I think the fees come in and it goes hard, like you had mentioned.
I'm 100% in favor of this.
Okay.
I mean, this is super. We started this discussion months ago to increase so that we wouldn't, I think this is super. I'm sorry I didn't read down further. It happens when you use electronic versus paper. So, I mean, we could adopt this now as far as I'm concerned.
No. We gotta just revise
Yeah.
the policy, and I want a resolution that properly does that.
Okay.
But as far as the timing, did you have something to say?
So just on the yearly piece that our agency council mentioned, it makes sense in terms of maintaining compliance, right? That we charge an ongoing fee. So that makes a lot of sense to my mind. Just in terms of the range, we can, I'm happy to discuss it more, but anything, would you give us sort of a recommendation on what the range, or like, how do we tell developers or applicants
This is
where
the
they
range.
fall? Yeah, this is the
This
range.
is what attorneys charge,
Yeah, great.
and other IDAs charge.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Cool.
But what explains the extent of the range between $2,500 and $10,000 for a pilot administrative fee? How does one determine? I think that's your question. How does one determine whether it's $10,000 or $2,500?
Great.
Well, it depends on, and I have to say this artfully, how easy or hard it is to get the transaction to close. So there was a lot of work on other transactions that we've done since I've been counsel to the IDA, which would warrant a higher fee. You might have to look at documents as the board 3, 4, or 5 times. Those kinds of things. We might need special meetings. So really it's look and the amount of the project too, right? The dollar value that's on the project. So there's a lot of things that come into play with, what the application actually says. Do you want to add anything, Victoria, Chris? Okay.
I think your point about the range is a good one, because to a project that will look like a lot of money, and it certainly is for $3, $5, $10 million project. As we work through this discussion, we can certainly consider clarifying, as Kate just explained, what would lead to a higher fee, complexity. Are we looking at mixed use where we're evaluating, and I know you said we don't do housing, but I think there's certainly sentiment in the town that it's very expensive to live here, and if we're asked to play a role in helping that, we'll certainly review it. So if it's a mixed use with commercial and, for example, workforce housing so that our nurses and teachers can live in town, then that's a much more complex transaction to review and to get to close. It also depends on, as Kate said, the size of the transaction, which can tend to increase the number of people that you have to talk to, and other factors that we can flesh out more. And frankly, one of the things that simplifies the review is when the application comes in very complete and the applicant is very upfront, very open, very willing to talk, that smooths things over. So without proposing that we charge a different fee per applicant, I think we want to encourage applicants to be as upfront and open as possible, because that smooths the process for all of us and for them and gets to a quicker closing.
I think what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're not sure at the beginning of a project necessarily how complex or time-consuming the review process will be. Therefore, would we be telling applicants, for example, for a pilot administrative fee, that your initial costs are $2,500, but could reach $10,000? Or are we telling them it's going to be $2,000, $2,500, $5,000, $750 up front, and that's it? And how do we get from $2,500 to $10,000? And I think you're telling me it's based on complexity and time and all the rest of how much would be.
You really don't know that, so you're going to close.
Right. So the applicant does not know what their fee costs will be until the end.
Then that is why the range is there.
Right.
So
So we have
yes.
to tell them what that range is, and
Right.
they have to plan for the high end in effect.
Correct.
But without knowing what they will be until sometime down the road.
Well, right, but that's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Well, as attorneys too, when we get to closing, even our fee is dependent upon how difficult the application has been and the amount of time that's put into it,
Yeah.
So,
And they're just putting this into their loan amount.
right.
I mean, it's not like there's plenty of floating fees,
Oh,
right?
okay, then now I'm confused. So this is not a fee that we charge upfront.
Well, we didn't even get there yet.
Okay, because, that's, I understand David's point about how much is it going to be, but we're all in business, and we all have to make estimates as to how much a fee is going to be. And we evaluate the application when it comes in, and we say, okay, based upon your application, your pilot administration fee is $6,532. And because that's what we estimate it's going to be. We bid all the time. I used to make proposals, and I don't have an issue with that. Maybe you do, but I don't. But I think these fees should not be at closing. It's not onerous if someone's going to do a $4, $5, $6 million project that they can't write a check for, whatever, $25,000 during the construction period for our fee. I don't have an issue with that at all, having them write the check.
So did you say lock them into a set cost up front?
Yeah, I would do that. Right now, we risk the whole thing. I mean, I would take that risk.
But within the ranges that we set,
Yeah.
but they would know up
You don't
front.
agree?
I'm just letting the board discuss and then I'll weigh in.
Yeah. So it sounds like we were going to discuss this. Well, I don't know. We were going to discuss. What I heard was we don't know what the fees are going to be, so we're going to charge them $750 up front, which is market for IDAs. plus whatever the application's going to be, whatever it's going to be based on their specific request, as once we know. That's what I heard, and that seems reasonable to me.
Okay, but my feeling is we shouldn't wait till closing to get.
Oh yeah,
Well, right.
beyond the 750.
What you could do is take the base rate, which is according to these 25 to 5,000, depending upon the transaction, and then the rest is due at closing. You could do that.
The base, the minimum.
You're right.
Okay, as long as, because personally, I'm sorry,
Because if
I
it
don't want to
doesn't
chase
close,
somebody, I don't
Right.
want to chase somebody for money if it doesn't close, okay?
right,
And I'm not here as a bill collector.
right. So the other option would be to collect the outer range up front,
Give them a refund.
which,
Are we set up to do that?
as an attorney, I could hold it, but I don't know that I,
Okay, I don't know personally if the outer range for all transactions might be an overkill, okay?
right. So that's why we have the range.
Yeah.
And, I do agree with you though, because what can happen is I've got X amount of time into it. Finance has, Victoria has, and then it doesn't close or it's withdrawn or, whatever the case may be. So it may very well be that, you agree on this range just so the public sort of knows what they're looking at, applicants sort of know, but maybe you do, there's a flat fee, period. You have to pay it upon us moving forward. And you all agree that that covers us for whatever, it is. And if it turns out that the fee should be more, at least we've covered what we need to cover if it shouldn't close, and we can collect the rest at closing. So you might just want to say, to walk in the door, it's $5,000 or whatever it is that, you want to come up with.
Well, this has a minimum, what, 15,000? No, way less. Okay, 12,500 minimum.
So for example, one of the things that occurred, we did a refi for an applicant this year, and how this all came up. There was the splitter agreements, if you remember, there's administrative fees to that, but we really didn't have it down on paper. So what Victoria and I and Joe Scott did was say, well, what do other IDAs charge for this? And we collected that fee. I'm trying to memorialize that, at least in a schedule, to give the applicants an idea. Because I'm thinking one in particular wanted a refi, it was a rush, it was a pain. And then we said, that'll be whatever, $2,500. And they went, what are you talking about? We didn't know there was a back end fee to amend this. So I think, we need to be clear in our policy and in our documents when we do close. And it's knowing Joe Scott, I'm sure this, he did disclose that, but for whatever reason, the applicant missed it. So, people were saying, well, where's your policy? Where's your fee schedule? How would I know that? Right? So that's where all of this is coming from. Plus, I don't like shooting from the hip every single time we've got to,
I think that makes sense. And I think the more we can spell out what these incremental costs are between 2,500 and 10,000, for example, I think.
That's difficult to do.
I know, but I guess I'm sort of just an off the wall question for the lawyers. And just want to make sure we're on solid ground here. Since we are all uncompensated board members, how can you say, if I have to review something 3 or 4 times, that we're going to increase the cost to an applicant? Because my time is free. I mean, can the idea actually incur revenue based on my voluntary commitment of time?
but you're paying me, you're paying
Right, no,
John
I
Taylor.
understand for the
Like,
lawyers.
you're
and
underwriting.
right. No, I understand that. But, I mean, I heard you say, wow, you may have to review an application 3 or 4 times, you may have to do that. And I'm just
Yeah, that's a good
curious.
question. I think the idea is the money that would come in for these fees would go into the coffers and become public money and then be used for public purposes. I think that's sort of goes around.
But I can understand for the executive director, lawyer, whoever, any contracted employee, as you see. But to sort of imply that the IDA would be compensated for my time?
No, I don't think so. But like, for example, I'm going to pick on Mr. Kotlow here. Dick says, you know, Kate, this language in this agreement, I think we should tweak that to say X, Y, Z, right? So there's a revision from the board right there that's going to incur my time as both ED and agency counsel. We might have to have another meeting. John's going to be there, you know, so I don't mean to, of course, imply that, but I don't know that it goes so far as, you know, to say that, you know, we're charging them for your time.
Right, and if it's just the you know.
But you're going to ask me, your feedback is going to force fees,
So
right?
whether that then the structured fee schedule should really be just based on, you know, your hourly rate or something like that, you know, which simplifies the sort of the guesswork of trying to estimate what the time commitment would be.
Well, if you
we know
think
for
about
every
it,
hour that you spend on a
sure.
project. it's
So
gonna
the
cost-
ED
Hasn't she
rate,
done that though?
yeah, so the ED rate is $150 an hour.
Right.
So let's say it takes, you know, for a pilot, it might take me 10 hours. That's $1,500, right? So there is some sort of quantity, and that's ED time. That's calling the meetings. That's
No, I
doing,
understand.
you know, council time in addition to that, which is the real review of the documents and the back and forth, that's going to be in addition to that. So I would say that 2,500 would cover me alone for a very simple transaction. Just if you want to talk numbers,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So, you know, that's not,
That's
you
really
know.
not attributable to his.
I-
time, it's really-
You
right.
know, all our fees are based on institutional time. I don't agree with David at all. Our fees, our fee for doing the transaction at half
That's why I
point.
said it was an off the wall
Yeah.
question.
No, I understand. It's because, you know, I dealt with force account and all different types of in-kind services, but, you know, we charge based upon, all these fees are not based upon unit of service. It's based upon, you know, what the market will bear and we believe the economic value is. And there's an economic value for us to spend the time to evaluate an application and approve it that doesn't go anywhere. And, you know, I think that's an important aspect. You know, and originally when we went into this, I had mentioned that we get a deposit for our back end fee, which becomes hard and forfeitable. I like this better because it's a fee for service for institutional time. You know, not necessarily my rate times time equals.
In terms of where the dollars go, I would say first, our existing and long-term fee schedule isn't necessarily tied to an hour of executive director or an hour of council time. The application fee and our ongoing administrative fee is for the basic functioning of the organization and a very little bit to the town because the town does, along with all of the other tax bills, administer the pilot bills. So there's certainly precedent for saying organizationally, we don't need to assign it to an outside budget item. We incur costs to our daily business. And I would argue that that's established here in our existing policy. With regard to, you know, so I think the next time we talk about this, maybe we want to have two different schedules. So the fee schedule for when a transaction has been completed and is coming back for a revision, that's, I think, the most significant challenge that we have right now that we'd like to have resolved in the next month, because those have been becoming more frequent. As Vista builds out, we're going to see more splitter agreements. We don't have a provision for what we charge. And so that's, that involves meetings and all of the things that Kate has been describing. If someone wants to renew, pardon me, that's not the word, to refinance a mortgage, when the property changes hands, the board gets involved. We conduct due diligence with regard to the project. We would typically also talk to planning, and that absorbs John's time as well, about what's going on with the existing project before for the due diligence that we do along with the town and ask their help on.
And you have to remember too, like for a, a straight line lease transaction, we're an agent, we're giving them that financial benefit. The fee is in exchange for all of that. And administration of that. At the end of the year, we have to check up on the project with our surveys and, they have to report back to us and all of that. So I think I might have sent you down a rabbit hole when I said, you're going to have to review it. What I really meant is before you can authorize me to really, and Joe to close a transaction, it is going to come back to you time and time again.
No, I raise it only the off-wall possibility that we run into legal problems if a volunteer unpaid board is somehow charging for their services.
Oh, right. No.
Yeah. But I think my broader, I agree. I think there's a need for some kind of cost certainty. I want to encourage applications. I don't want to discourage people up front from pulling out. I don't want surprises midway through or at the end of a closing and when a business thinks they're going to incur one cost and all of a sudden they get hit with something else. And I'd like to have a way of, as accurate as we can, estimate for these applicants what these incremental cost increases are going to be. But to tell someone it's going to be between 2,500 and 10,000. Even if they can afford it, they're going to say, they're going to charge me the 10,000. And we ought to be able to explain how we got to whatever the final number is, and maybe having a schedule of whether it's your hourly wage or whether it's the cost of just the IDA's time, however you want to factor that. It would be helpful in some kind of schedule. That's all I'm suggesting, so that we don't incur some bad blood down the road or some, and that we're consistent, that two projects of sort of equal time and merit are charged the same thing, even if they're different. One is housing and one is manufacturing, for example, that we have some way of equalizing what the cost ought to be for both of them. That's all. And that's not an easy thing to do, I admit. And that's
right. I mean, if that's the move you make on the chessboard, I say, well, then tell me what the flat fee is, because that is going to take too much.
Right. No,
Right.
Well, we
I
could
think we should
establish,
go.
And I agree with Dick. I think that may be the way to do it, is to figure out what an average flat fee would be and just tell them up front. It's going to be, you're going to pay upon application, upon review, upon closing.
I have no problem with that
At each step?
until Dick says, we got
that'd be
killed
best.
on this deal and we should have charged more.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Do we have anything pending in the next 30 days?
Well, no, I don't think so.
So we don't have to, these fees we don't have to come up with anything that's going to impact us in the short term.
No, but it's coming. Like, we're working on some other,
So we can have
splitters
something
and-
for our October meeting.
It'd be nice.
Okay, we don't need an interim today.
No. I don't think we're prepared to.
No, I just
They're-
wanted you
they're-
to agree with each other and not agree with each other and talk it out. So.
Okay. I disagree with you on governance.
That's because I'm always right.
You're right. Okay, well, this is good. You did.
All right, so what's the plan then? We want to adjust these to flat fees? Yeah,
I'm happy with this as it is because if they don't want to apply, if they don't want the exemption, they don't apply. Or if they find out that the fee is too expensive, then they walk. And that's their decision to make. They're telling us that this is what the market is. So let's give the flexibility that they need to make sure we don't get burned. Because I'd rather just make the decision right now than wait to see us get burned. Because I'm happy with it as it is, because I think we get the level of certainty to the applicant that we need. And if they don't want it, it's their choice. They don't have to take these exemptions.
Well, let me-
That's where I'm coming
Okay,
from.
but let me sort of, then flip it and say, do we have any evidence that we have, lost money on any project because of the time we've spent reviewing it as opposed to what we charge?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
And
Sounds like we have, yeah, right?
Yeah, what is that experience?
Well.
But
Yeah,
Well, without mentioning a project. is
Right.
there-
right,
what-
Projects that don't close,
right.
projects that take, for reasons that are up to the applicant, not externalities,
Right.
reasons that are up to the applicant, take many months and a lot of phone calls or emails to get critical information. That's been a cost. When our executive director was paid a salary, we were not as aware of the hours that Tom would have spent chasing down applicants. What is also a concern is a project that closes but never functions. And that's a particular concern to me because we're really here to support projects that will have wider benefits, economic and fiscal, to the town of Bethlehem. And so when we in the town move forward on a project and maybe somebody on the applicant's end knew that it wasn't really viable, then we've gone through all of this effort and the town doesn't actually get anything. There's no additional tax revenue because the property was never developed. We don't have the indirect and induced effects from the new jobs in town. So we've certainly been directly burned in terms of effort and staff time that wasn't reimbursed, but we have also had instances where there may have been reason to know that the project was not viable. That information was not provided. So being upfront with this is, we are serious about this. This isn't $500. This is a serious engagement and review. This is a serious project for the town and it's meaningful for the town. And we are going to ask you to put more money up front to demonstrate that it's meaningful to you and that you will also put in the effort. It's harder to walk away from a $10,000 investment than a $500 investment. And I think that's part of the core of it. And as to sum up, it's not just the IDA experiencing a loss, it's potential loss, opportunity cost, loss of time and effort for the town whom we're representing.
And I think that makes a lot of sense, and that would argue, I think, for a higher upfront fee and maybe a set fee schedule where they pay a larger initiation fee. And then, again, halfway through the project or at some point during the project, when we confirm that everything is staying on track, you pay us up and so. Almost like with any kind of contract that you have, like we're doing home remodeling or something. And then the closing costs, where we balance everything out. We say, we're going to have some additional expenses that we didn't incur because you delayed or we had to do something.
We have other stuff on the agenda to get through, right? But I don't know I don't know what you're saying is different than what's proposed, because given what the range is, it seems like we have the flexibility, but maybe
I guess
understanding
I was just a little concerned with coming up with some rationale as to why it's 2,500 to 10,000 as opposed to 5,000 to 750.
Well, I guess it's, Bill, this is really good finance committee proposal to the board.
Okay.
And this is great conversation, but we really the finance committee didn't approve it, it's proposed to the board. So, that's, we'll end that. Thank you.
Okay.
Where we were, current projected fee income, I don't know, the only really discussion, we've got more revenue this year for PSEG. We've got some extra unanticipated closings this year, and we know the PSEG falls off. So we've got a pretty good schedule in the minutes of in the agenda of a projected fee schedule, and we're going to take that in consideration with the budget, which I discussed before, and we may have some proposals to give to the board of some extraordinary items for 2023. So that's really that discussion. So why don't we go into the governance, since some people have to.
Okay, and I'll go through this quickly then. The governance committee did meet in joint session with the finance committee the other day, and we did not, we raised a number of issues without necessarily taking any action. We are still talking about having a training orientation session for board members, both to discuss the broad scope of governance issues as well as again, statutory requirements and all, fiduciary duty, things like that. So we're trying to arrange, based on everyone's schedule, some block of time where we can all get together and just go through a range of governance issues. There is still a discussion underway, and this really sort of crossed over to the finance committee about a credit a credit card, who should have access to an issue with document retention, along with the town on a new website, comply with all requirements related to on the web for access to. I guess we're criticized a little bit by when it came to establishing performance measures. Our document tended to be more a set of accomplishments, and we need to be working on some real, developing some kind of real performance measures that we would hold the board to and staff. Okay. And we also had a general discussion about a public comment period during our meetings, whether there should, whether how that should be handled in terms of notice, timing, content, whether we can restrict comments based on the agenda for that meeting, or whether it becomes a sort of an open discussion by the public. We do have time constraints on the meetings and things like that. And we want to make sure that we're transparent, but at the same time not get bogged down in tangential issues. And we had a final discussion about a concept that was raised several months ago about a projects committee, and I think the consensus of the coming out of the governance committee meeting, but no action was taken, was to, rather than create a formal standing committee, that we have an ad hoc committee that as projects come in, the chair in consultation will be up to the whole board, just appoint one or two board members to take the lead on approving or reviewing those projects and reporting back to the board, rather than having a standing committee of certain members who would be burdened with reviewing all the projects that come in. So again, no action was taken. A lot of things are still under discussion, and I think over the next couple of meetings we'll flesh out some of these. So turn it back to you, Kate.
Okay. The next item is old business. Just a quick update. Burt Crane has not closed yet, so no real updates on that. The Plug Power Project Phase 2 is temporarily on hold. They're doing a lot of work there with different parties, including National Grid and some other things. So we thought that they might move forward as early as next month, but there's been a little bit of delay, but they're still very committed to moving forward with a second phase. I don't know, John, if you have anything to add to that from your office or,
Nothing to add. No,
Okay.
I think that sums it up.
okay.
Could you, on Plug Power, you mentioned when we were talking inside, that there's going to be a, like a grand opening.
Yes, and we know that they'll probably do some sort of ribbon cutting, and Kevin O'Connor from the Albany County Alliance mentioned that it could be the end of October is sort of what they're eyeing at this point for that. I believe the construction though is finished or pretty close.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what my understanding is that, later October might be that ribbon cutting.
I'm sure when they know, we'll know.
Yes,
Because
yes,
they
they'll
have to
work on it.
coordinate the governor and it's
Right.
going to be a thing. So,
Mhm.
that's why, we'll probably find
It'll be
out.
After the auction.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh,
Well, if not
sorry.
before,
Right.
why not?
Um,
She can do
It should
it.
be somewhere else.
Yeah.
John and I are
Good point.
moving towards getting the website complete, hopefully by the end of the year, and changing over email addresses and all of that. There's a lot of data that has to be migrated as well, so we're still working on that. Do you have anything else from?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a couple items. Yeah, right. So, Kate referenced the website, right? So that's both, to, ensure compliance on kind of the policies and document side of things, but then also, kind of rebrand a little bit. That's kind of the gateway to economic development in Bethlehem, updated economic and demographic data, available sites, additional information for prospective projects, right? So working on that, and certainly that, you're shooting, targeting the end of the year for that to go live. We'll have several opportunities for review ahead of that to make any changes or additions. Right on the projects front, continue to be in close contact with Kate regularly on that. No updates to provide today. And then the last piece I wanted to touch on was just one of which has taken up quite a bit of my time for the last month or two. But the state over the summer came out with a few significant new economic development grants, three specifically that we've been looking at. The first is called Fast New York. This is a new, the state put $200 million, is putting $200 million into funding improvements to get sites more shovel ready. So that can include infrastructure improvements, transportation upgrades, right? To really get those sites shovel ready for larger projects. We're engaged on some opportunities with that. A second program called Restore New York that the state has put $250 million into, and that is specifically to revitalize kind of blighted commercial and residential properties, right? And that can include a range of site work up to including demolition of existing buildings, as well as additional site prep work. So that's another key program. And then the last program, which is what I referenced before, has taken up most of my time in August and September, is a program called New York Forward. And this is a brand new program this year, modeled on, if anyone's familiar, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative that's gone for several rounds. The state put $100 million towards this initiative, but basically it's designed for communities like Bethlehem, right? Kind of suburban hamlets and villages to spur and support kind of Main Street revitalization, redevelopment opportunities, right? So communities are eligible for up to $4.5 million in funding. We actually just submitted our application last Friday and focused on the Delaware Avenue corridor, right? We really kind of looking through the program guidelines and the communities that they're looking at really fit the bill of the types of communities that the program was designed for, right? So, had a great advisory committee composed of business leaders, residents in the Delaware Avenue corridor, public meeting, several community engagement opportunities to identify what's the vision for that corridor. And the grant goes towards supporting basically projects think of it outside of the roadway, right? So it can include redevelopment of individual properties. So several of the projects in our application were, smaller, individual mixed-use properties along the corridor. It can also fund branding and marketing improvements in the corridor, right? So things like street banners and new street lighting and kind of design upgrades to make it a more cohesive, inviting corridor. We looked at projects along the Albany County Rail Trail, making that more of a gateway into the Delaware Avenue corridor, right? So a range of things, definitely, it should be, if it's not already, will be up soon on the town website, the application on the homepage there. So definitely encourage to take a look and happy to answer any questions.
We have funding, and when you say applications,
Sorry, yeah, to make clear, so we're applying for
what we're
funding.
seeking, yeah,
Yes,
great.
exactly, right.
Great.
So basically how it works is that each region in the state will be allocated $10 million. And then within each region, so within the capital region, there will be 2 to 3 communities that are awarded up to $4.5 million. And I know that there was a lot of interest. I think 24 communities in the capital region alone submitted letters of intent to apply. So we should find out later in October or November about decision.
And this is the grant application where you asked for and received a letter of support for the IDA.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, thank you to the IDA for providing support on that.
And we would happily have passed a resolution to send that letter, but given your time frame, we were able to get together and unanimously provide that in advance. So hopefully at some point we'll be able to work it into a regular schedule. Okay. So under new business, we have the Champlain Hudson Pipeline Power Extension. At the last meeting, we were presented with the fee splitting agreement, because this is undertaken by the Albany County IDA, and the fee splitting agreement pretty much mirrors the one that we entered into for the Plug Power project, which was also the county IDA. We asked for an additional month to conduct some due diligence. We were provided, especially by Hutchinson and Russ, you guys were great, with a lot more information to conduct that due diligence. And so we are asking this morning for the board members to take a vote, and I will ask Chris Canada from Hutchinson Russ to explain the project status and maybe go through a couple of points of that.
Sure. So as far as I'm talking with Joe before he left on vacation, I think this one is scheduled to close October 5th or so. So we do have a pretty firm time on a closing date on this one, which is a good thing. As Victoria said, this resolution just authorizes the entering into the economic development cooperation agreement that involves the splitting of the fee due to the Albany County IDA being involved. I think it's percentage, I'm coming in this little cold, but it's, was it 3/4 to 1/4? Is that kind of how it fleshes out? Based on the amount of the property that specifically in the.
Yes, it's on a percentage, yeah.
So I'll happy to answer any questions, but that's kind of the long and short of where we're at. Close to the finish line.
One of the things that the board brought up at the last meeting was just that we review the underlying documents to the transaction, which we did. We also circulated those, as well as recirculated the fee split agreement once we had that and final. I'm satisfied that, the underlying documents in the transaction was done properly, and that, I would recommend that we approve the fee splitting agreement pending any questions or concerns.
I would add to Kate's one more thing, which is that because it is running through a portion of the town board also conducted a good deal of due diligence about the right of way and the use of the land. And ultimately, all of the approvals required from them were granted.
I think it's great.
Okay.
I'm
A motion. So we have a motion to approve the
So moved.
resolution. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ted. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstaining or opposed? Okay, thank you. The resolution authorizing the Economic Development Cooperation Agreement for the CHPE project passes.
To be closed on October 5th. To be closed in first week in October.
Yeah, next week.
Okay, that brings to an end the new business. Future meetings, I think we wanted a brief discussion, and Kate has provided a proposed Wednesday schedule for us.
Yes, so if you notice, the November and December meetings of this year, I moved up because of holidays. So I just wanted to sort of, I know it's hard to tell this far in advance where we'll be and all of that, but in general, if those dates, those Wednesdays, it would be the second Wednesday as opposed to the fourth Wednesday. You were generally available and that was okay in the direction you wanted to go in. It may very well be, sometimes we don't even need a meeting, so we'll see how that goes. And then the complete change for 2023 would be from Fridays to Wednesdays for the entire year. And of course, that would be, John had checked the schedule for this room for those Wednesdays and it should be okay. So I just wanted to put that in front of you for, quick discussion and or, thoughts on that. Because usually we post the whole calendar on the website for the coming year. And then if things need to change, we'll go on and change it, but usually we do it that way. So any objections, thoughts, concerns?
Was there some discussion about having 8:30 meetings? I'm not opposed to 8 o'clock, but I think some of you had.
Yeah, so when I initially committed, David told me it was Fridays at 9, which was much.
8.
Is it 8?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so maybe, I don't know. It doesn't matter much to me between Wednesday and Friday at 8, so it's equally challenging with school stuff, and I make it work, so I don't have a perspective with respect to that, so. And I like what Kate said about not, if we have applicants and we get through our business, we maybe could a particular.
The only thing I have to say is that next meeting is very important because we have to pass our budget.
Yeah.
So we have to have commitment for a quorum. And
Yeah.
we're statutory required to have say October 31st, right?
But other than, if we don't, the world won't end, but we'll get yelled at loud.
Okay, so.
Yes.
They're not even meeting. They're not even in the
I don't know,
office, I
but
don't think, are they?
No,
I know somebody will let
they're
it slide
back.
by and they got yelled.
We're dedicated to have the budget passed next meeting.
Yes.
We're committed.
So we'll put that number 1 on the agenda as well.
Yes.
So,
I may leave after that to go type it into the Paris.
Okay, all right.
I always have the nightmare that the thing is approved and you sit down and Paris is down or my internet's down.
Sure.
Blackout.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have a budget item to send Al to somewhere where the internet works, but if he will do
I'm
it.
not,
It won't be Tampa.
I'm not going to my home in Florida Friday because I don't know if they even have a home indoor power and internet. So
Up north.
I'm down in Bonita.
Okay.
All right, friends, that's all that I had.
I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Victor. Was the second? All in favor of adjourning? Any abstaining or opposed? This meeting is adjourned at 8:07. 9:07. Through the glare.
Right.
That would be.
Short meeting.